All right, welcome everybody. It's Saturday, February 8th, and I am about to lead a workshop in creating stories, creating stories that are inspired by and based on personal experiences. Last year in the festival, I led 10 different sessions late at night, India time, about dramatic structure. And I'll be using a lot of what I learned in that process in this session. So one thing that is needed here is for you to have a pen and paper, because I'm going to invite you to write. This is like a writing workshop. As people may have noticed, the Chennai Storytelling Festival, our
Poinangde.
culture, hmm? Our culture is that we are not using breakout rooms very much, because we are finding that two-thirds of our people keep their cameras turned off for reasons that we don't ask. So, we don't like to put people in breakout rooms if their camera is turned off. So what we've all been doing instead is inviting people to write on paper. And there'll be times where I'll stop talking for a couple of minutes and just invite you to write on paper. And there'll be other times where I'll invite you to write into the Zoom chat section, so we can have a conversation based on what you are writing. So, does everyone have a pen and a notepad if you want? Jeff, if you just want to do it in your mind, that's fine too. It's up to you. Okay. So, the first step in, I've been studying with Laura Sims, as most of you know, for 50 years. She won't take responsibility. But no matter what she says, I've been learning from her for 50 years. And I picked up some things from her and some things from many, 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 many other people. So uh, the first thing I invite people to do in a workshop like this, whether it's autobiographical story working or creating fictional stories, is to begin with your life story. There's the expression, we write what we know. So the first thing I'm going to invite you to do is take a few minutes and, I kid you not, write down your life story in 3 minutes. Yes, begin with, I was born in such a year and such a place, and end with, and here I am today. And in the middle, I suggest focus on your joys, your frustrations, and especially, what do you love to do? What do you find that when you do it, you feel, this is what I'm in this world to do. And for many of us, it's taken a number of years to figure out what it is we love doing so much, because it's very much wrapped up in our identity now. But in many cases, there were a lot of false starts, and there were a lot of skill gathering in different areas, and sometimes disappointing and painful when we found out what we were doing was not the ultimate thing for us. But looking back, you can see that it was a very important skill gathering phase. So please go ahead, write your life story, especially in terms of, what do you love to do, and how did it come to be? Shakespeare wrote, the course of true love never ran smooth. And that also applies to one's love with one's profession, one's creativity, one's vocation. So please take a couple minutes, and you can bring your personal life into it too if you like. And of course, this is only for you to see. Nobody else is going to see this. So go ahead, write a 3-minute version of your life story. Maybe you'll include some social issues, of course, personal issues, Uh, Go ahead. Life story time. If you find you are bringing in discussion of your relationships, that's fine. You know, many professional writers, both create fiction and nonfiction, develop an affinity for certain types of relationships. You know, some people will specialize in parent-child relations or husband-wife or brother and sister. And very possibly because in their own life, they've had a very intense relationship of that type. And they've thought a lot about it and they've become expert in relation to that type of relationship. So when I work with college students, of course, the personal relationships and their vocational life is very combined, especially in the sense of choosing which college to apply to and join and what their major is going to be. And often this involves a conversation with their parents, and they may agree, they may disagree, but that's an example of how your professional and personal life may be connected. Okay, so I hope everyone has begun to think about and write about what do you love to do? There's a certain way of saying it. When you're doing this thing, you are most yourself. You are most at peace, even though it may be exciting and thrilling and dangerous, but you're at home with it. What are you at home with? And of course, a little bit of hopes and plans about the future is part of your life story, but just a little bit. Um, okay, can I ask you to stop writing for a moment? Throughout this session, you know, naturally you'll write whenever you feel like it. So, you know, the writing has begun, and basically it's not going to stop. You write whenever you want, and I'll bring up new things, and you can ignore the new things, or you can, you know, integrate the new things with the old things. Um, okay, so you have a life story there. And again, it's a chronological story that begins with I was born in a certain place and here I am today. I've lived to tell the tale. Okay, the next step I like to work with is look at your life story and identify some themes in it. 3 themes, 4 themes. You know, usually we talk about themes really in relation to a novel or a movie, but your life story is just as significant as any novel or any movie. So a theme in one's life story is something that happened again and again and again, that is happening again and again and again, or has happened perpetually. It began at the beginning and it's still happening. You know, something good, something bad, something in between. But you know, what are some elements, some aspects of your life that begin to make it your life and not anybody else's? I mentioned there might be social issues involved. You women may feel, you know, you haven't been able to do certain things because of discrimination against women and girlhood. That's a social issue, but it's also very personal, of course. Uh, so try to identify just off the top of your head some major outstanding themes, outstanding elements, aspects of your life story. Okay, now I
Eric,
hmm?
can you give us another word for for either themes or aspects?
Uh, Something important that's happened in your life. Yeah,
You're looking for
but
patterns. Are you looking for
yes,
patterns?
patterns, patterns either that have come from within you or that have been imposed upon you. Exactly. Patterns. Yes, go ahead. Lynn, go ahead.
Ah, yes. Eric, you need to give us more time to think. No, I'm serious.
I know,
I
but this
just
is
asked for three themes, and
well,
then
yeah, just keep working on it. Well, if my voice is distracting
no,
you,
no, tell you what. Please give us more time to think. This is precious gold.
I will a little bit, but we have a lot to do and we only have I teach a 9-month course. Please join my course. It begins in June and it goes till January.
All right.
Mona was just in it. She gave me a recommendation.
Yes, I was, and it was a real good experience with Eric. His feedback, the questions he asked after every story, I just loved them.
Yeah,
Thought provoking.
in that course, we work with creating stories and also autobiographical stories, but also fairy tales and animal stories and epics and historical stories, all sorts of different stories. But yes, forgive me. I'm going to run through a lot now, and you're free to just turn off the volume on your computer. Seriously, if you have a train of thought going in your writing and you don't need any more input for the moment, just turn off the volume because I want to run through a bunch of things and this is really just an introductory event here. Okay, so I hope you have identified some patterns of your life, some which you may enjoy, some which you may not, some from inside you, some imposed upon you. Um, and so keep those in mind. Another step in this process can be identify one or more turning points in your life story where there were big decisions or the big decisions coming up. And try to focus on, if it happened in the past, specific moments. You know, story writing and storytelling, story making really thrives on specifics. Not just that my teacher was very kind to me and helped me a lot, but specifically, what did she say? What is one thing she said? And then what did I say to her? So try to remember particular conversations. And a conversation consists both of what you and the other person said and what you and the other person didn't say. You know, what we say to each other is just the tip of the iceberg of what we're really thinking and feeling. So try to identify one or more moments, situations, conversations in relation especially to a turning point in your life story. And then, see, I'm going to give you different methods. One method from here is to take that turning point or that an interesting event in your life and project it onto an external character. So you're no longer saying it happened to me, but it happened to an imaginary character who is not you. It may be like you. It may be, if you're a woman, it may be a woman character, or it may be not a woman character. But you project it onto an external character, and suddenly this is no longer autobiographical, it's fantasy. And when you begin fantasy by projecting it onto an external character, you can add other elements of fantasy too. You can change it in any way to bring out the point, to imagine what could have happened, what might have happened, what you were afraid might happen, what you hoped would have happened. And this, at this point, I want to mention a famous acronym in the writing world, ROQI. I can't tell you who I learned it from, but it's very popular. ROQI. R for remember, O for observe, including especially sensory observation. You know, what did you smell? What did you see? What did you hear? What did you touch? So you're making the memory very vivid. And then Q, you start questioning things. Why was she wearing that yellow dress that day? Why was his hair cut so short? You know, just question everything about it that occurs to you. And now that your memory is primed, now, if you like, you can play and imagine. I for imagine. Imagine what might have happened next. You know what did happen next. What might have happened next? What could have happened next? What would you like to have happened next? You know, you can change the ending to whatever happened. This sort of work can also be done in the therapeutic sense. Uh, and you know, we have a saying in psychology, the second experience of a thing can be a liberation from the first experience. So in this process, you can review events and make changes if you like, just for fun or for whatever reason. But this is part of the fantasy process. Okay, so keep that in mind. ROQI. Remember,
Oh,
observe, question, and then imagine. Let your imagination free. Let it fly. What could have, should have, would have, might have happened. Did someone have a question or comment? Anyone's welcome. And people are also welcome to write into the chat section. Okay. You know, I did a PhD in folklore at the University of Pennsylvania, and one of the things we studied was play. Yes, we study play. And it said there in academia that two types of play are games and art. Art includes story work, story play. Both have conventions and rules, but different types. Games are competitive. Art is done just for the sake of expression and beauty. But in general, play can provide a model of the past and a model for the future. So when you're creating a story, it's related to the past, but it also may be related to the future. So another way to do this activity is to think about just what is on your mind. Sorry to be so frank. just just let everything drop. What's on your mind these days? What do you think about? What do you daydream about? What are you nervous about? What are you happy about? What are you ashamed about? You know, 98% of it we can't even talk about to anybody because it's too embarrassing. But when you're journaling, you can. And you know, whatever you're thinking about, very likely many other people are thinking about that too. So just give it a thought. What's on your mind? When you daydream, what comes up? And what would you like to share that's on your mind? You know, there's that expression, I'd like to give you a piece of my mind. That's an angry expression, right? But the inclination in there is I want to share my mind. It really means I want to impose my mind. So we don't mean that. But as an artist, you want to give a piece of your mind to the world. And you think about what impact you would like your story to have on listeners in general or on one particular listener. Sometimes we create a story for a person and we hope they'll take it to heart, and it might affect their behavior because the story might show them, if you do XYZ, if a character does XYZ, certain things might happen. Do you really want that to happen? So stories can present positive and negative examples, and a listener can take it to heart and think about, gee, I don't want a certain result. I want a different result. So I don't want to behave like the character in that story, or I do want to behave like the character in another story. So these are different ways to approach. Some are from the inside, some are from the outside. What is on your mind? How do you feel? That's a question of really what's on the inside. But the questioning what impact you want to have on people, of course, we can't change anybody's mind, but we can raise questions and offer them situations that maybe they'll think about and take it to heart, and maybe they'll get into it. Okay, so stories are all about situations. All stories are about situations, and when a story comes up, when a situation comes up, we project ourselves into it. We identify with the characters. We have empathy for the characters. So you want to create a situation that your readers and listeners will meditate on that situation, and they'll get into it. Now, a situation, just by the nature of that word situation, is a negative. I got a situation. I'm in a situation, right? So if you bring up a situation, you got to have a character who's going to try to get out of that situation or get into a better situation. Stories are all about characters making choices and having feelings. If you want to give a lecture, go give a lecture. If you want to make a speech, go give a speech. But stories are not like that. Stories are, you create a situation, you create characters in that situation, and you let nature take its course. You see what the characters do, for better or for worse. So what situations do you want to play and work with? Okay, at this point, I'm going to stop the information overload for a couple of minutes, and either I'll just let there be silence for a couple of minutes, or does anyone want to make any? Does anyone want to say anything? Either comment or question or anything? Does anyone want to share anything? Tell us a theme in your life. Yes, Lynn.
Hi. I'm writing, I'm going to show you about a little dragon. And what you've been telling us is just what I'm doing right now.
Okay.
Hold on, I'm going to show you No God.
Okay.
There he is.
Okay.
And right now I am looking for a place to share my puppet stories. And do you have any suggestions about finding a place to put your work into the outer
Well,
world?
first, let's hear more about the story itself. That dragon, for one thing, the dragon's a dragon. That's a situation in itself. But does the dragon have any other situation?
He winds up, okay, he's born and he's a constellation.
Mhm.
Then he winds up being taken by this really bad guy.
Oh, no.
And it's, oh yes. And he winds up kicked out. And I still don't have what's going on in that bad place.
Hmm.
I'm afraid to go there
Hmm.
and how that will affect myself and the reader
Hmm.
or and the participant.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets kicked out of there. and he goes to a utopia where the teacher tells really bad jokes.
Oh
And
no.
the owl goes, Howl, howl. Then so the teacher teaches by experience, and then there's a school that comes out of that, and the school explains the the fury behind the experiences that the teacher put them through. And finally, I don't have an end.
Okay, but you have a lot of beginnings.
Yes.
What really jumps out at me is that he's pulled down from someplace. He's grabbed and taken against his will. That's a that's a very strong situation. It's an archetypal situation. You all know what that word archetypal means, right? It's universal. All humans experience. We all have experienced at some time or another being put where we don't want to be, physically forced even. So this is happening. First, he's pulled down, and then he's forced to sit in some boring class with a teacher who makes bad jokes. That's another type of torture. Well, I taught a lot of college classes, and once 20 years ago, a student said, "Well, Professor Miller, you're a nice guy, but your class is mad boring. Mad boring. So boring it was like driving her mad." So I've tried to improve, but I was very struck with her use of language. So yes, it can be very painful to be forced to be someplace where you don't want to be. So that dragon is having that experience a few different times. Sudha, did you want to say something?
Yes, Eric. You were talking about patterns, recurrent patterns.
Mm-hmm.
In my life, I find that nothing comes easy to me. I have to work really hard for what I want.
Hmm.
Of course, in the end, I do achieve things, but that's been the story of my life. I have to work very, very hard, maybe harder than most people.
Why do you have an idea about why that is?
I don't know. I've just accepted it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe I'm comparing myself unfavorably with others because you see somebody achieving something, uh, they probably it was just luck. They got lucky, and I'm not so lucky. Or at times,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not complaining. I've learned that hard work has its own rewards, so I've now learned to not complain about it.
And you've found that with hard work, you're able to
Yes,
do what you want to do.
yes,
Well, that's somewhat satisfying, I think. It sounds
yes,
satisfying.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess nothing comes easy for most people.
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
was just imagining that uh, a few are extraordinarily lucky, or it was probably just my imagination.
Hmm. So if you were going to make up a story in relation to this, would you have one character who, see, you can have one character who has it easy and one character
Mm,
who has it hard, or
mm,
you can have a character who first is one way and then changes.
mm,
See, so first, for one character, it might be hard, but then something might happen, and maybe then after that transformation, things might be easy for her. So keep that in mind, everyone. The option of two characters, one more
mm,
successful than the other, or a chronological development of one character who has one experience first and then another experience. Maybe the character learns something.
Just reminds me of the story we heard last week. I don't know from whom, I completely forgot, but about this person who wanted to be a bird and thought life as a bird was easier, and is luckier than their own life, and then when they have that transformation to a bird's life, it all seems freedom seems so easy. And I don't know who from whom I heard the story, but I'm sure it is in this
Mhm.
session.
And then
And
there were
then
problems with being
at
a
some
bird.
point, there came lots of problems, and they realized that human life was way better than a bird's life. So it's when you change places and see things from a different
Mhm.
perspective, and it all changes.
So
Yes.
The grass is greener.
Yes.
Yeah, on the other side. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So it just looks like that from outside, that some people have it
Yeah.
easy or whatever. We don't know what the circumstances are and how things. Yeah. So it
Exactly.
reminded me of that story.
Yeah, many
And also, Eric, I was told that the only place where success comes before work is in the dictionary.
Okay. Yeah.
I have something to add here.
Go ahead.
Like when I see my life and I ponder over a lot of things, one social issue that I notice is the education system expects you to study harder, and whatever dreams you have to keep it pending, in the waiting list. So I wanted to be an author from a very young age, but because I had to give my exams and clear my board exams, and so that dream kept waiting.
Mhm.
And it was only, a couple of years back, 2 years back, I wanted to take a stronger step. And I always thought the system is like this, you have to accept. But now what I feel is, maybe this was destined and that was not the right time. And second, I feel
Exactly.
that those things were not, like those other dreams were not as strong enough for which I would have stood so strongly. So this was something which was there in my heart from my childhood. And when it came around me, I stood strong for it. And now I'm a different person.
Are you interested in making a story about this? About a character who goes through something similar?
Yes, I would love to, because this is only when, I'm talking to you right now. There are a lot of things which are flashing from the past. So this transformation can be showed as a story.
Mm-hmm.
Does it have to be a story, Eric? Can it be any piece of work? A column or an article, for
Uh,
instance?
Almost anything is a story. The only thing it's not a story is just an image. You know, an image, a sound, a thought. But the minute you put a couple thoughts or images together, it becomes a story.
An image is just a story waiting to be told.
A story waiting to be formulated and come into focus. Okay, anyone else? Yeah, I'm still thinking about the dragon, how it was forced to come down, and then it was forced to sit someplace, and I hope eventually that dragon can be free, can
He
have
hopes so too.
can have agency. I like this word agency, although it's a kind of an obscure word. Many people really don't know what it means. But agency means that you're captain of your own ship. You can control to some degree. You can control your circumstances, your destiny, and many women in the feminist movement. The word is used a lot. That women should have a sense of agency,
Ownership also, Eric.
ownership. Yeah, ownership of yourself, ownership of your life. So many stories are about a character who gets that ownership, earns it, creates it, discovers it, makes it. To some extent, that's called a coming of age story. Okay, and I want to run through a few dramatic structure ideas and take it all with a grain of salt, because I really don't believe creating to formula. I think it's what you want to do is create by just finding out what's on your mind, what's in your heart, what you want to share, what you want to say. You know, people talk about you got to have something to say. You got to discover what you want to say. It's part of finding your voice. So that's what needs to go on. But it won't hurt for you to hear some famous ideas about dramatic structure. You can take them or leave them, and maybe you can use them to tweak what you already have. One idea is that at the beginning of a story, what really kicks the story into motion is an inciting incident. That's INCIT. In other words, at the very beginning of a story, things are there, but then something happens, which throws things into chaos or throw things out of balance. And the story cannot end until things are brought back into balance. So look out. You probably naturally in any story you will create. There'll be an inciting incident near the beginning. Something really happens that has to be dealt with, that a character has to deal with. Okay. Then the most famous idea in story work is that you have to have a character who wants something. It's such a cliche, and as I say, don't feel limited. I've had students say, "No, my character doesn't want anything. She's standing on the beach looking at the ocean, and she doesn't want anything." So I said, "Great, that's a short story." That's a very short story. If you want a longer story, it does seem that there's going to be something's going to happen, then and along the way, someone's going to want something to happen or not happen, or they're not going to like what's happening. So this is all. Another word for this is that the character may be on a mission. Character may want something. Maybe, maybe not. One famous story structure that has especially been applied to fairy tales is that at the beginning, everything's at peace. The family's together, the baby's in the womb. But then something happens. The family and the home is shattered, and the family members are scattered to the four corners of the earth. Maybe a natural disaster, maybe a villain. Uh, Something happened which destroyed the harmony and peace and the loving togetherness. And then, of course, the story cannot come to a peaceful end until the group is reformulated. It's not going to be the same because maybe characters died along the way, and they certainly suffered along the way. But some member of the group manages to bring things together again to some extent. That's one idea which applies to fairy tales, but I remember 30, 40 years ago in college, I got a hold of that idea and I walked around for a week saying, that's not just fairy tales, that's not just stories, that's life. My life is like that. Every day in the morning I wake up, things are scattered, and by the end of the day, I'm trying to put them back together. So, these ideas are fun to play with, but they're abstractions. Lynn.
Hi. To me, it seems like there's a thin line between writing about a character's life and stressing out the reader. And I'm concerned about that.
Well, I kind of feel that it's an artist's responsibility to, when you create difficult situations, to at least hint at some kind of way out of it, some kind of solution, some sort of way to release the stress. I don't believe in just leaving people in a nightmare. So, use your imagination. I tell you, want to hear my imagination about the state of the world today?
Sure.
My good news? Eventually, some of us are gonna get on spaceships, and some of us are going to be like do a mutiny because the spaceship will be owned by some billionaire, but we'll do a mutiny, we'll cut off communication, we'll go someplace where they can't find us, happily ever after. That's my best happy story.
Okay.
But yes, there is the issue of revisiting trauma, both for yourself and for your readers. But I say there's the idea that the second experience of a trauma can be a liberation from the first experience, because the second time you are more in control. You can think of different options, different ways to handle it. You're together with your either your therapist or your audience, and you can attack, you can respond to the trauma. Whereas the first time you experienced the trauma, it just happened, right? One was helpless. So yeah, if one feels one is being triggered by one's own creative work, one should stop and take a walk. If you're getting overwhelmed by difficult things, you gotta be able to. You have to have the emotional intelligence to realize that things are getting overwhelming and ways to deal with it, including maybe seeing a therapist. Any other thoughts, comments, questions, sharings? Let me look in the chat. Louise says, my best story is that enough people will heal themselves so they can turn things around. All right, that's a beautiful story. I'm a flower child from the 60s. I was a junior flower child. I was only 11 years old in 68, but I got it. I wanted to be a flower child. And I believe in all this stuff. If enough people can heal themselves, we can turn it around. The summer of love. Shakespeare always starts with a dilemma, not harmony. Yeah. Well, a dilemma then has to be worked with. Since I told you one famous story model, I'll tell you one or two more. The one I just mentioned is by Vladimir Prop, a Russian scholar known as a structuralist, because he was looking at the structure of stories. That is that it begins with togetherness, then breakup, then togetherness again. Not to be confused with Joseph Campbell's story, which is a little similar, The Hero's Journey. I'm sure you've heard of it. In his vision of story, and these scholars are just as creative as any novelist, because they get a vision in their mind, and then they find stories that fit the vision. So Joseph Campbell's vision was at the beginning, things are calm, but they're too calm because we're being oppressed. The authorities are keeping us down. They're brainwashing us, they're manipulating us, they're controlling us. So it's a soft prison. We're being oppressed. Most people go along with it. They don't even know they're in a soft prison. Most people just they don't even know. The expression is they're like sheep. But amongst us, there are a few people with the spirit of a hero or heroine, and we just can't take it. We're not in a position to rebel at this point, but at least we can escape. So we jump into the ocean and swim with the belief that Mother Nature will take care of us. Or we run into the mountains, into the forest with the belief that the wild animals will protect us. So we get away from human culture and human society, and we just get in touch with the with nature and with the divine, if you like that term, with the cosmos. Cosmos is a good word for people who don't believe in God, because cosmos just means, the whole universe. So you get in touch with the cosmos and you get your magic something. You find the fountain of youth. You find the magic special thing which represents your own inner life source and your connection to the universe. And now the power is with you, as they said in Star Wars. The power is with you, and you cannot be stopped because you are fueled by the energy source of the universe. And so now you can go back to where you came from and overthrow the tyrant and establish heaven on earth together with your like-minded partners. I mentioned the Star Wars movies made by George Lucas. George Lucas was a friend of Joseph Campbell, and he hired Joseph Campbell to coach the writers for Star Wars. So the Star Wars material is largely coming out of Joseph Campbell, including that famous phrase, "May the force be with you." So in your story, if your character is going to go through a transformation where she finds herself and gets her agency and throws off the negatives and the negative patterns and the negative indoctrination, she's going to get in touch with nature, with her deep self, and now she cannot be stopped. So that's Joseph Campbell's vision of a story. Lynn?
There's a theory in education called the soft revolution.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm sorry, the soft classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And what that is you have couches around and chairs around and material to sew things, just everything, the soft revolution in education.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
So what does
That's
that
what I have to
mean,
give right now.
the soft approach? Tell me again what that means.
It means that you go back kind of to cottage feelings. Give me 1 second. See, thinking takes a little bit of time, Eric.
Sure.
It gives the soft revolution is where in education is where the students' needs lead. I don't really, maybe somebody else has an idea about that, how schooling would be softer.
Mm-hmm. Well, it may refer to that it's about helping the student grow, mature, bring things out of herself. So things are not imposed upon her, but her development is being facilitated so that she can grow from the inside. I think
And having the materials around so
Mhm.
that they can do that.
Sure. Sure. Now, Louise, what are you saying here? Oh my goodness. You're not talking about hippie viewpoints. Why the heck not? I'm a hippie. We're not talking about hippie view. I've been there too. I feel that approach to be superficial. Oh my God. And Western technology based. I'm coming from a deeply spiritual and shamanic ancient perspective. Well, the spiritual shamanic is very much in tune with my idea of the hippie. Who was that writer who the archaic revival? Dennis McKenna, who tragically died of a brain cancer too soon. The Archaic Revival. He wrote a number of books about it. So that's very much part of the Joseph Campbell approach and the flower child, or some of the flower child, some of the hippie approaches. Western technology, that's what we were rebelling against. And the storytelling movement, the global storytelling revival, was part of the 60s revolution. It was a rebellion against television. People said, hey, why are we getting all of our culture from television, which is run by governments and big corporations? Let's get back to each other. Let's get back to the earth. Let's get back to people. So that's to me, that's part of the flower child hippie. But of course, technology has its place, and until recently, technology seemed to be part of the soft flower child revolution. Yeah, because in Northern California, Steve Jobs and all those people, it seemed Steve Jobs was a hippie, for God's sakes. He came to India to find a guru. He was part of the whole 60s thing. And the whole the San Francisco scene was soft flower child. But somehow in the last few years, it's all turned around to be these billionaires who well, I shouldn't talk too much because we're being recorded, right?
Correct.
But you know what I mean. The tech revolution, the Western technology is no longer associated with individual freedom so much. It's more associated with Big Brother and propaganda and brainwashing. Yeah, and suppression. Okay. Let's look at a couple more classic aspects of dramatic structure, which you may or may not have in your story, which you may or may not bring into your story. There's a belief that in general, many stories are about a process of maturation in a character. Because a character may want something, want to go to college, want to be prime minister, but then there's the other story of what does the character need to do in terms of her personal internal development to make that happen. The internal maturation process is going on at the same time where she wants some object or some commodity. So keep a lookout for how your character is going to mature and develop internally. Of course, there are going to be twists and turns. There are going to be ups and downs, setbacks. There are going to be obstacles. Once you determine if your character wants something, there are going to be obstacles and overcoming obstacles. She's going to have allies, she's going to have resources, and she's going to have problems. And then there may be an all is lost moment where things just fall apart and it seems like all is lost. But if she's resilient and, doesn't die, doesn't commit suicide, somehow is resilient, then she's set up for the final situation, which is where she's going to rise to the occasion. And she didn't know she had it in her. Nobody knew she had it in her, but she's going to be able to do what she needs to do what she wants to do what she's dreaming of doing. She's going to get her agency. And that is a type of climax. And then the final thing is after she does that, miraculously, that she does what she didn't even know she was going to be capable of it. Then what's called the falling action is, okay, she's done it. Now everyone's going to look at her differently. She's going to look at herself differently. There's a new reality now, which people have to get used to. And that's really as the story comes to a close. Somebody had their hand up? Lynn?
I have a really good example of where someone overcomes a real travesty. Really short. A friend of mine, his entire art studio, which was huge, burned down, and everyone says, "Oh, what a tragedy! He'll never work again." Blah blah. The next day, he starts a painting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the character develops and comes to a better place. Excuse me, I was distracted by what Louise is writing. Oh, I've got to answer the door. I'll be right back. Uh, I'm sorry, Lynn. I'm going to ask you to say that again, but first I need to reply. Um, Louise says, Louise, where are you? Are you visible? No, it doesn't matter. Anyway, Louise, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're giving voice to things, but he said the Flower children were middle-class kids growing up in post-war Western culture. They knew nothing about spirituality in a deep sense. Hey, you're talking about me. I'm a middle-class kid, and I probably knew nothing about spirituality, but I tried. I read Dennis McKenna, The Archaic Revival. I read Joseph Campbell. My favorite book to this day is When God Was a Woman by Merlin Stone. 1976, about the how the patriarchy took over and suppressed the matriarchy. Uh, so uh, so yeah, we're us middle class kids. We're trying to get with it, but anyway,
And what is it?
I'm sorry, Lynn. Say it
When
again.
you say trying to get with it,
We're trying
it
to get deep and real. Yes.
okay.
Um. All right. Comment, question, sharing. Fabio, you're having a good time there. I see a big smile on your face. You want to tell us why?
I'm loving it, Eric.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
I was waiting for Laura's, but you have done well, my friend. Thank you
Thank you very
for
much. As
staying with
mentioned,
us.
Laura, due to unavoidable circumstances, Laura could not be here today, but she sends her love and she's going to reschedule soon.
Yeah, and you kind of made us think deep in our own stories, and you made us a lot of insights,
Well,
a
thank
lot
you.
of things to
I,
do about the
uh,
structures. Some people question the structures, and it's totally okay.
mhm.
The good thing is when we think about our own stories and we deal with the structures, we realize, wow, that happened with me. Like Lynn just said, her friend artist had his whole life burned down, but then he or she was already painting. I was dreaming about being a soccer player, you know, when you said about partners in Brazil, we have this partner of dreaming about being a soccer player, so then you can become famous and this and that. And I'm preparing a story set for a museum here, and it's a soccer museum. And I was thinking about my career as a storyteller and almost as a soccer player. But then there was a turning point in my life. Like I lost a goal, you know, I lost my goal.
Mm, mm, mm,
Yeah, an important goal. It was a championship and this and that. And then I got fever because I lost the goal. Can you believe that? Like a kid
mhm.
missing a goal and then his whole life changes. But it's so interesting that when we realize our purpose, I thought, well, maybe my purpose is not just scoring goals. Maybe my purpose is doing something else. And then many years later, I realized that I should be instead of a marketing man that I was studying to become. And then I realized I should tell stories for kids, even no charging at all. And then with their smile, energy, just like you're curious about my smile, because I think stories can make people smile. And that's a powerful thing, when we start laughing about ourselves, like, wow, I missed a goal. Oh, big deal. And then we score a goal of achieving our how to tell a story in a way that people relate and people understand. Oh no, I never thought about being a soccer player, but I had other dreams, and I also miss a kind of nice drive or nice play. I always thought I was special. Then I realized I was not so special. But then I reunite with myself, as also somebody said. I started. Dan Shisti from Canada. He also, I would say, you have to find your real listener. Who is your good listener? We have to tell stories in the sake of our listeners, and the first listeners should be ourselves. Am I hearing what I'm saying? Like the Nasruddin tale. My grandpa used to tell this short tale, which I'm going to tell. How to become a wise man? They asked Nasruddin, and he said, "Well, you should listen. You see, this old man is telling something very important, and people are gathering to listen to what he's saying. But then one day, Nasruddin realized there were a lot of people around him, and they were listening to what he was saying. And he always said, when this person says something, you pay attention and try to get the deep meaning of what he's saying. And then after he finished his speech, um, he realized, wow, now people are listening to me. So he came to a person who was listening, and he said, can you please tell me what I just said so I can become wise? So that's what we're trying to do. Thank you so much.
Okay, Rajesh, please speak, and then I want to lead you through two little creativity activities before we finish. But go ahead, Rajesh.
Yeah. So the assignment or the exercise which you asked, I tried to write something of my own. I do not know whether that I never tried to actually write this way, but hopefully it's a short piece. Can I read that, please?
Just a few seconds of it.
Okay.
I apologize.
I'm Rajesh Shinde, born into a family where my father served in the army while my mother, though illiterate, was determined to educate her children. I was forgetful as a child, but I worked hard, driven by the desire to rescue my mother from hardship. I did well in school, but my heart was drawn toward the arts. However, like many others, I was steered towards science as it was the practical choice. As I moved from a small town to big cities and then to the larger world, I struggled with the sense of not belonging. Complexes crept in, but my relentless work ethic kept opening doors for me. Over time, I became workaholic, ignoring my emotions and pain. Along the way, I met friends and mentors, but few remained on the pedestal I had placed them on. Then came Pallavi, older than me, but firm believer in my talent and dedication to the filmmaking. She encouraged me when I needed the most. My parents were proud of me, my achievements, but when I defied their expectation, marrying outside my caste and to an older woman, my father distanced himself. Yet, with time and the arrival of my child, I slowly reconnected with my parents. Now, having crossed midlife, a long hibernated dream stirs within me, the dream of becoming an actor, storyteller. But this pursuit has unsettled my partner. I stand at crossroad, uncertain where this journey will lead me.
Great work. And sometime you might want to project this whole story onto an external character and see what that does. When we do that, it gives you a whole different set of feelings and ideas. And as you explore what might happen with that external character. Okay, now I'm going to just lead you through two creativity exercises because this is just about connecting with your unconscious, opening the door, opening the window, to use metaphors, to your unconscious. And today's topic is creating stories. Next week, I'm leading a scheduled workshop on story and drama for teaching and learning. That's where we harness the creativity and use it for some ulterior purpose of trying to facilitate teaching and learning. But today we're doing pure creation. So the first activity I want to tell you about and help you experience is called active imagination. You can keep your eyes open, keep your eyes closed. You can draw out a picture if you like, as you like. Imagine you're walking in a forest, and on a path in the forest. It's nice and cool because you're in the shade, and you touch the different leaves. Some are rough, some are smooth. You can smell the rotting wood. It's a good, healthy smell. And you come to a clearing, and it turns out it's not the clearing, it's the beach. You come to the ocean. And there's a huge beach with sand and the sky. You know how huge the ocean and the sky is ahead of you and on both sides. It's just very, very large. And it just goes on almost forever. So you walk down to the water's edge, and there's a little boat there, a little rowboat. So you climb in, you push the rowboat out, and you climb in, and you row a little. It's a calm day, so there's no danger. You row out a little ways, and you look down, and you cannot see the bottom of the ocean anymore. Suddenly, it's gotten very deep, and you call out to the ocean in a poetic way. You say, "Oh, ocean, you're like my imagination. You're like my unconscious. Please send something up that I can learn from. Sometimes at night you send a dream to me, and I learn from the dream. Now in my waking state, please send an object or a creature, a being up that I can learn from." And then you just wait until there may be little air bubbles that come up. Some people like to imagine actually getting out of the boat and going into the water, and they can imagine having their eyes open in the seawater. But whether you're in the boat or in the water, I'll stop for a few seconds and see what comes to mind. Does anything, either an object or a being, does anything come up? If something comes up that's not interesting, let it go and keep the space blank and let something else come in. When something does come up interesting, if it's an object, personify it. Pretend it has human ability of consciousness and speech in any language. And initiate a little conversation. You say, "Thank you for coming. How are you?" And then make some small talk. Where are you coming from? What are you doing? And now you're role playing with that object, which is now a character, because that character might ask you a question or might tell you something. So you have a conversation with that element that has come up from your imagination. So this activity is called active imagination. It's active in two ways. You're actively requesting your imagination to send something up, and then you're actively having a conversation with it. This activity really was formulated by Carl Jung over 100 years ago. Carl Jung, is really the founding thinker of all the art therapies. Story therapy. I helped to develop story therapy, storytelling therapy. It's all based on Carl Jung, with the archetypes, the collective unconscious. Okay, so that was active imagination. we're using the ocean as a symbol for your imagination and unconscious, and you are poetically, playfully, but very respectfully personifying your imagination and asking your imagination to send something up. Okay? Let me go on to the other one. I know it's going too fast. I apologize. Just keep all this in mind. The other activity I want to help you experience is called question-based story making. It's really a evolution out of the 6-part story making. But I had a conversation in a previous Chennai Storytelling Festival with the founding thinker behind the 6-part story making method, and she agreed that we'll open it up and we'll call it question-based story making. So in question-based story making, imagine a scene outdoors in the daytime. It can be in a city, it can be in a park, can be in the countryside, can be on the beach. Imagine an outdoor scene in the daytime. If it's in a city, there's also going to be some traffic noise. Now imagine the air quality. Is the air smelling polluted? Does it smell fresh and clean? Is it windy? Is the air still? Is it a hot day? Is it a cool day? You know, imagine, which means create the atmospheric conditions. And, you know, is it cloudy? Is the sky clear? This is, you know, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just a matter of whim. What would you like? Okay, so now you have a landscape. It can be in a city, can be in a park, and you have the air quality in mind. Now, imagine one or more characters appears on the scene. Can be human, can be animal, can be other, can be male, can be female. It should not be you exactly. It can be someone like you, but it's not you. Okay? So it can be an individual, it can be a group, but even if it's a group, zoom in on one individual there and get a sense. What is she? How is she walking? Is she walking, you know, in a jerky way, in a smooth way? What is her posture? And then, how is her hair? What is her hair? You know, is she young? Is she old? In between? What is her hair going? What's going on with her hair? What is she wearing? I'm just using the female pronoun because most of you are female here. Although no, we have a healthy number of men here actually. So I'll use a little bit of he also. All right, so what is she, she, he, they? I cannot bear to say they for a singular. It's the English teacher in me. I cannot bear it. But okay, what are they? What are they wearing? And finally, look at the person's face or the animal's face and get a sense of how the animal feels. You know, by looking into her eyes and her mouth, get a sense of how she feels. And if she seems to feel in a certain way, then you can ask yourself or ask her, why do you feel that way? Why might she feel that way? Does she want something? Does she want to go someplace? And if you have an answer to that, you got your story. Because I told you, the minute you have a character who wants something, that's the story. Because what's going to happen? Are they going to get it? They're not going to get it? What's going to happen along the way? You might also think, where is she coming from? Where does she live? Where does she stay at night? Does she live alone? Does she live with other people? So, but finally, you're going to zoom in on her face and look at her eyes and her mouth, and try to get a sense of how she feels. As I say, this is based on the 6-part method, but the 6-part method just is much more abrupt. It just says, imagine a character in a landscape, and does that character seem to want anything? So I felt that was much too abrupt. So I give this the warm-up of the landscape, the air, the posture, all of this stuff. And anyone want to share anything? What came up from the ocean? What came up in the landscape? Or do you want to say anything about these methods? Go ahead. Anybody, anything. Rachel, go ahead, Rachel.
In the ocean, I saw a submerged wreck like the Titanic with crusted jewelry that was not usable. It was all covered with mud. And then I turned my focus and I saw a beautiful octopus. And we had a conversation. I told it how much I loved its colors and how intelligent I knew it was, and it shifted colors for me. And it looked at my wetsuit. And so I was just wearing a plain wetsuit, so my wetsuit started changing colors.
Wonderful, like a chameleon.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. A wreck obviously it seems like it's representing one's broken dreams.
Well, it was whatever it was old stuff that didn't serve me anymore.
That's right. That's right. I usually do these two activities right after inviting people to think about their life story and their themes in their life. So with the hope that elements from the life story will find their way into these imaginings. So if you do this with other people, try to encourage them to let there be connections between their thinking about their life and feeling about their life and these imaginings.
And for the other one, I first imagined a city scene and women were dancing, but also on a beach. There was a lot of celebration with dancing. And then when you asked about the air quality, in the city, the air quality wasn't that good. So I got rid of that scene and just was on the beach with a group of women dancing and a dog came by. And then when you added men, I was dancing with a man and we were looking into each other's eyes and my posture was very erect. And dancing is something I used to do, folk dancing that I love, that I can't do now. And it was just wonderful. And then I went back to the women and separate scene, women kicking up their heels, long hair, free, joyous, just celebration, unbridled movement and pleasure with comfortable amount of wind. And I'm very sensitive to wind. I can't, wind disturbs me. So I'm very careful when I go out. And it was such a pleasure to be so free in the wind, in the atmosphere, free, moving freely.
Wonderful. And I didn't mean to insist that men should be there.
No, but it was very nice to dance with them. And I was also thinking of an Orthodox situation. So one group of women were Orthodox and they only danced with women. And then another group wasn't. And the man did not want anything from me. I didn't want anything from him, but he was holding me and I was able to keep myself upright. We just wanted the pleasure of the dance.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you for the exercise. This was a lot of fun.
Sure. Anyone else? Now it's time for final words about this workshop.
Oh, about the workshop.
I know, Lynn, I apologize. I went too fast. I did too much. I didn't answer.
That's okay. It's brilliant. I'm really lucky that I came to the workshop this morning. And I achieved more in my thinking, that just what I needed along the way. So spontaneity was just wonderful, and I lucked out. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. I lucked out that you came.
If nobody else says any,
Yeah, keep going.
okay, I wanted to hear your words on the Socratic method, which is where people began. Tell me about Socrates and what you know.
I'm not an expert. The Socratic method, as I know it, is you ask people questions and you get them to realize that they know the answers they know the answers to the questions they're asking. But you have to help them become conscious of that. Something like that.
That is the toughest part for me, is finding what to lead them to, how to lead them, whatever.
Just lead them to their own awareness of what they
Correct.
do. You know, the whole thing of coaching and counseling is not to tell people things, but to help them realize what they are already thinking and feeling. Anyone else?
Thank you so much,
Sure,
Eric.
thank you. All right, well, I'm on the verge of stopping the recording. And I think I will.